Yes, welcome one and all to A Celtic World, the YouTube channel for Celtic fans all over this great big flat earth of ours. And from where on the surface of this great big flat earth does everybody come tonight? Well, you can see in our names where we're all checking in from. I'm currently in Malaysia. Paul's in Perth, Australia. Hello, Paul.
Hey, Gav. Yep, on the western coast, opposite Steve.
Opposite Steve, who's below you in terms of the windows of this presentation. But in fact, anyway, you know what I'm saying. Steve's in Sydney. How are you doing, Stephen?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, mate. We're cooking away nicely here. Having a bit of a warm summer. Spring. Warm spring. It was about 35 degrees today. So a bit warmer than Scotland is at the moment.
35 is hot. Are you wearing anything on your lower half underneath that fetching shirt?
Give us nothing at all. I'm a bit concerned about the chair I'm sitting on. It might need to go in the bin.
Okay. Well, we can all use our imaginations as to why that might be. All right. And then Michael is in Rome, in Italy. What's the temperature in Rome?
The temperature in Rome is about 30 degrees. It's pretty hot for this time of year. Wow. It's been hot this last whole week. It's been boiling. So I've been in hiding since the Lazio game. Trying to hide from all the Lazio fans.
Well, we'll get on to that in a minute. People are probably getting jealous about our calls of the temperature. We'll just say hello quickly to some of the early arrivals. Paddy Lavery, who is one of the benchmarks of success in the world of Celtic YouTube. Oh, I haven't actually read this, but okay, Frank Brennan. Rodgers report. This is his Rodgers report, which might obviate the need for us to have a conversation at all. 7 points clear at the top of the league after 8 games, 0 points from 2 games in our Champions League group, out of the League Cup, and a load of bargain basement punts signed up. So positivity as always from Frank. And Street Shouter says, hey. Okay. Right then. Let me add this lovely little feature. And say to everyone who's currently watching us or indeed on the replay, we'd be delighted if you were to sign up, subscribe to our channel. We're only getting started. We live stream every Monday and Thursday at these times, so you can check what that means to you. But the videos are always available on our YouTube channel. If you go to the live section, you can see them all there for all time. So you may have noticed on Twitter that I sold this show as having 4 different countries represented: Australia, Malaysia, Italy, and Korea. But unfortunately, Danno, our American in Korea, had to pull out, but he is replaced manfully by Stephen. So good man, Steve, for joining in.
Come off the bench, James Forrest style.
Yeah.
Look, it's a squad game. I've got to rotate.
Harry McCourt style. Put out your cigarette, put down your pint, and come on.
I have to rotate. Okay, so what is on the menu? First of all, we're going to talk about the domestic season so far, in particular with regards to Brendan Rodgers. What's he done well? What's he done not so well? Secondly, we're going to move on to talk of Europe, where we stand, and a little bit of crack from Micky, who's in Rome, obviously, so he's got his finger on the pulse of the Lazio fans, no doubt. And finally, we will round off with Celtic socials, because there's no particular game to talk about. So it'll be interesting.
International break.
Yeah. But it's a good time, I think, to have a good old chew over Brendan Rodgers so far. I think that's an interesting topic. So let's get on with that. So we're 7 points clear domestically. Celtic are on the up. Rangers are in disarray. Is the season over already, Paul?
Well, on another podcast that we all originated in, I was so bold the other week to say it was, which would have had Tommy, who used to do that show with me, in pieces because he's a very nervous man. But I was obviously partially flippant. You never know. But 7's a big gap at the best of times. There's going to be some turmoil until they appoint a new manager. He's going to have to get his new plans in. He can't change his squad until January, and how much money is available They look like they've spent that money badly. So yeah, I'm going to stick to my original prediction. League's done.
I think I agree with that prediction. It looks like it could be done and dusted already, even though there's still a few derbies left, but I can't see them getting any better. That's for sure.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we may drop a few points here and there, but are they going to be
But
imperious
they
from
lose
this point
games all
on?
over the place. Aberdeen beat them and the Kilmarnock.
Well, but for a silly decision to sort of stick a hand out inexplicably when, there's no guarantee your man at the back post would have scored. They were struggling in that game at Paisley. So who knows when they'll get this appointment in and how long it will take to settle. So I agree. I think there'll be some more points dropped there until the window, and I think we could be completely out of sight by then.
Stephen, you're one of the wiser, older heads among us, and you've seen what's the expression? Defeat snatched from the jaws of victory many times. So are you going to resist the urge to declare it over?
Yeah, I don't know about wiser, older, yes, but yeah, look, like I think it's difficult for Rangers to come back from this. I'm not going to say it's over because still got to play them another 3 times, so it's probably, I think it's a bit too soon to say it's over. But as you mentioned, I can't see Rangers getting through anywhere near close to Christmas with full points. Which would take them to the next time they play us at a full Celtic Park with none of their fans there, probably for early in the new year. So I can't see them coming back, but I think it's just probably a bit premature at the moment to say it's completely done. Having said that, I mean, if the gap becomes 10 points and then maybe 12 or 13, then I'd say probably then, yeah, it's gone. But at the moment, 7. If we were to lose a game, and I mean, I don't think that's beyond the realms of possibility over the next few weeks. We've got Hearts and Hibs to go to in the next 3 weeks. It's back to 4 points potentially, and then it's a little bit tighter. But hard for Rangers to come back from this, but not over yet.
Well, I suppose it's fair to say that the bigger the gap that's in front of you, the less likelihood of being premature. Okay.
I think the other thing here that's important is how our games are going to land, right? So because we're in the Champions League and they're in Europa, we're going to be playing Saturday to their Sunday. We can, as long as we get the result. Steve's right. We've got a couple of difficult away fixtures coming up, but if we get the points on the board, then the pressure just continues to rank.
Yeah, that's true because they're going into every game 10 points behind.
Assuming we win our game, yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
if we were to take full points from Hearts and Hibs, then we can say that we've already been to Aberdeen, been to Hearts, been to Hibs, been to Rangers, and if we find ourselves 7 points or above ahead at that point, our next section of fixtures is going to be much easier than theirs,
yep.
And they're going to have to go to all these places. So you would have us in a very strong position.
Exactly. Like after those 2 games in Edinburgh, we've got St Mirren at home, and that's the full circuit done. So, and you're right. We had a tougher sort of first round of games than they did. So, we come out of that a good gap in front. You'd expect it to extend in the next round.
All right. Well, let's talk about what has happened so far, and Brendan Rodgers. What has he done well so far? I'll go to Stephen first on that. Just give us your thoughts about what you've seen from Brendan, that not only has he done well, but he's maybe perhaps done surprisingly well in your point of view.
Well, I don't know if it was surprisingly well. I mean, I'm very much a Brendan Rodgers fan, and I know and I regard him as a very, very high caliber manager. So I'm not surprised that he's doing the things that he's doing well, and that he's shown that tactically he's a very astute manager, and we've seen that in several occasions. I think he got mostly everything right in games like away at Rangers, away to Feyenoord, away to Livingston. We went down to 10 men. These were all perfect examples of where Rodgers' strengths lie. Another one of his strengths is man management, and you can see from the way Matt O'Reilly has reacted to having Brendan there this year. He's gone from strength to strength, and he's been very vocal about how happy he is to be playing for Brendan Rodgers. So, these are the things he's good at. and I think we're starting to get a flavour of what we were getting when we got Brendan Rodgers back. It was a bit of a difficult start to the season due to with a couple of big players left the club, a few big players injured. It's always a bit of a transition from a new manager when a new manager comes in, especially when the old manager was such a big personality like Ange. But I think we're starting to see now over the last couple of games, everything's starting to come together. Players are starting to understand what their roles are and what they can and can't do. And I think that's only going to get better in the weeks to come.
Would you go along with that, Michael? Do you see players starting to?
Yeah,
put their
definitely.
stuff on their
Go along with that, and even from off the park point of view, for getting all those players re-signed, all the big players signing new contracts, was a good job. I think he's done well with the injuries at the back. What he's done with Liam Scales. Liam Scales has been terrific. I'm not sure how much Brendan Rodgers has to do with that, but I'm sure he gives him a lot of confidence going into these games, getting picked and all. So he's done well from that point of view too.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly does give players confidence, it seems.
Yeah.
One of those players that we've been talking about recently is Hatate, and Brendan's comments about his discussion with Hatate. Paul, you wanted to talk about that, and
Yes,
as you're doing so,
Yeah.
I'm going to bring them up.
Okay, so I've never refreshed them today, and it's been a long week. But basically, he effectively said that they had a real heart to heart, and he showed it. I think he went and showed him footage, and I think it's predominantly around his off the ball, basically his work rate and his pressing, and what his expectations are of him to work in that role in the team. And he sort of said that once they'd had that conversation, I get like sort of paraphrasing, but it's sort of like the penny dropped, and the next game after that discussion is the weekend. So is that not what he was saying around that? I thought that's what he was.
That is what he
talking
was saying.
about.
No, I'm just I'm making faces because I've got so many windows to.
Sorry, I thought I'd imagined what he was saying, and you were extremely confused as to what I was on about. But yeah,
you can see what he
and
says here. Do you want to read that for anyone listening for their benefit?
Okay, so I went through things with him the other day. If he wants to get to the highest level, there needs to be more intensity in his game. I took him through clips of his game, all without the ball. If you press the game well, you'll pass it well. But he took it on board, was very open, and produced a fantastic performance today. That's the level. You can't switch the engine on and off. The highest level against the best players, you have to turn up every week. That's the challenge for him. He's not young. He's 25. By that level of intensity, everything else is then natural for him. It's my job as a coach to help him stay at that level. This was the first game that Ray has come alive for me. He has to press the game, and when he is at that level, then he is intense with the ball. He scored a brilliant goal, and he was superb. The point about turning it on and off is spot on, because that's one of the grumbles in the support, right? Is that he at times he's unplayable, and other times he just looks, a bit disinterested. I still think that the way he approaches the huddle gives him a negative impact with some people. Just bend the back a wee bit more, Rio, and you'd have a wee bit more folk on side. But yeah, it's real good insight into, and this is what we're talking about, how Rodgers sort of works with players. And Micky makes a great point, right? Those guys that have signed, they've not signed in a vacuum. They've all been signed by Ange pretty much, bar Cal, and then they could. All the talk was when Ange went, they'd be disrupted, people would want to leave, etc., etc. And Taman, they've pretty much all signed an extension. And that's got to be based on how they feel under Rodgers and what's coming ahead with Rodgers. So, yeah, it's a really good insight into those comments, and it's great that Rio is taking that on board and immediately produced in the next match afterwards.
Yeah, so player relations obviously is a major pro. Stephen mentioned earlier how he's kind of managed us through a highly disrupted period. Not just because new manager coming in and trying to impose his ways, but also a huge injury list that we haven't really seen for a couple of years. And he managed to get through that without giving our domestic rivals any encouragement by dropping points. I kind of That's one of the things I think has been most impressive about his start, is that he's dropped so few points, even despite all of those issues. Stephen, do you want to go further on that point or talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, he has. You're right. He has managed through a very disruptive period, and when you consider the game against Rangers at Ibrox, if you look at that one, a game that we went into, and not many people gave us an earthly of a chance, considering the defensive personnel we were missing, and the team we were forced to field. If you consider you had Lagerbielke and Scales as our two central defenders for that game. But the way Brendan set the team out on that day was just exceptional, and he got his tactics absolutely spot on. You could argue that the Rangers then manager got his so badly wrong that it made it probably a little bit easier for Celtic. But that's typical of what Brendan brings to you, and sort of mirrored games in the past from his first spell at the club, particularly one when we went down to 10 men at Ibrox, and he took off a midfielder, put on an extra striker in Odsonne Edouard, who went on to score the winning goal. We won 3-2. So he's just a fantastic manager in that position, and there's no one else. There's no one better than him really when the chips are down like that.
Very good. That's very positive. Let's just take a little moment here to acknowledge some of these comments coming in before I forget. One is for Micky. Paddy Lavery. Micky, the Ardoin boys are coming back over to Rome in February. Get that Guinness sorted.
It's all sorted.
I'm sure it's sorted. There's a comment I keep seeing from Strangelove the Doctor, who seems to suggest he's always tuning in from the Pentagon bunker again, cup of Joe in his hand. Strangelove the Doctor's comments are often referencing his whereabouts in the bowels of some intelligence place in America. There is our good friend Cara saying, gents. And Joseph Agnew. Nobody bigger than our great club.
Exactly.
Oh, and the Pork Chop Express also says hello. I was watching a video the other day with my son, which was Beard Meets Food. Do you ever watch Beard Meets Food? The guy, the competitive eater from the north of England. And he just goes around eating, doing these eating challenges. He's unbelievable. And he's a slim guy, but he just eats mountains of food. And he's quite funny. And his T-shirt on his most recent video said the Pork Chop Express on it. So I kind of thought I would snip that, but I didn't get around to it. Sorry about that, Pork Chop Express. Okay, back to business. So when you're talking about how Brendan Rodgers deals with players, and he's always going on about it himself, he's all about the players. To channel John F. Kennedy, maybe that would be good for Strangelove the Doctor. Ange asks players what they can do for him and help him achieve his goals. Brendan asks players what he can do for them to help them achieve their goals, and by extension, his. Do you think that's incredibly insightful, Michael? Would you go along with that?
I would go along with it. Yeah, I think so. I think Brendan's is more involved with the players all the time than Ange was, because Ange always said he always leaves the dressing room to them and he leaves them on their own. But Brendan's there every day at training all the time. And he just likes to work with all young players. It's just his style, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. Does anybody else think that those training tops that Brendan Rodgers wears makes him kind of look like a bit of a vampire, like a big-headed, small-shouldered vampire?
Have you got a photograph of one of those?
Well, if you don't know what I mean, it's this.
Okay, you put it like that.
Now you will never unsee that.
Yeah, I hate the new training kits. Like, I'm a massive Adidas fan, and apart from bits and pieces in the last few years, they've missed the mark a lot of the time. To be honest, it's quite disappointing.
Speaking of kits, what's Stephen wearing there? That's deserving of
That's an old Umbro.
Mid-70s, is it?
Okay, so no, this is the 1980 Celtic away strip, as worn in the Bernabeu Stadium when we played over there in the second leg of the European Cup quarter-final tie, where we won 2-0 at home and then lost 3-0 in the Bernabeu. So the very famous picture of Danny McGrain swapping pendants with the Real Madrid captain at the time, and this is the kit he was wearing. So I know
You look
one
a
of
bit like
blast
Danny
from the
McGrain
past.
yourself.
I was going to say, you're channeling a bit of Danny McGrain at the minute.
Yeah, I'm sort of the advancing years. There's more grey than anything else hanging around. So yeah, Danny McGrain's all right though. I'll take that as a
Well,
compliment.
absolutely. As long as I'm involved in this YouTube channel, there'll always be a place for you, Stephen. I want you to know that.
Is there going to be? Are you expecting some? Are you expecting some sort of coup, Gav? That otherwise you might not be. But you're
referencing the Brendan story about Danny McGrain. Stephen turns up in his civilian clothes. Okay.
Of course, yeah, of course.
Okay, getting back to Rodgers. And I can't do this without referencing the previous manager, but Ange has taught me to view managers with a much more suspicious eye. And it's almost like someone said to Brendan when he came in this time, look, don't lay it on too thick with the words. Actions speak louder than words. And he's taken that literally and replaced his words with actions. If you think about it, there was the incident with the little fan and the very demonstrative way he interacts with players like Hatate and CCV. I don't know if you've seen those clips where he's doing it all in the public eye sort of thing. Like I've got another little thing to show you here. You may have seen this. I won't have a sound on it, but this is him with Rio Hatate after the game. And in an era when players speak to each other like that, because they know every single thing is seen and parsed to within an inch of his life, its life. You don't think Brendan knows exactly what he's doing here? Is this... He doesn't have to speak to these guys on the pitch like that, does he? He's got plenty of time with them. Do you think, am I being too cynical to think that Brendan's PR machine is in full effect in this way?
You're probably
I'm not sure if it's PR machine. I mean, it could be just natural as well. I mean, he was very happy with the way Hatate played, obviously, and he wants to tell him, and it could be half PR and half natural, but I think it's when you get
got plenty of time to tell him. He works with him all the time.
Yeah, no, but when you've just finished your game, it's always nice to get an arm around.
Excited, Gav. He was so excited.
Ange was hugging Kyogo every single match. Like he was all over him every single time. Every time Kyogo came off, I was always like, yeah. It was like a love affair between Ange and Kyogo. That was always quite.
So you don't think there's any part of Brendan that is conscious of what good PR it is to be doing?
I think a little bit, but I think Brendan's been very under the radar this time he's been here. He hasn't been giving it the over 10 in a row and all the stuff with the fans. He's kept himself a little bit more to himself this time. As you were saying, for actions speak louder than words beforehand.
So Michael,
I remember back in Brendan's first training session, one of the players he gave, and I noticed this specifically, one of the players he gave an extra big hug to was Bernabeu, Alessandro Bernabeu. Gave him a big smile and a cuddle, and he's never been seen again. So
that was the Judas Iscariot moment.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. He'd make me smile and then whisper in his ear, "You're out of here, mate."
Yeah.
There's a kid in my son's school, which I saw the magazine of the other day, and his first name is Judas. And I was thinking, that is very rare. Very few people opt for Judas.
It's nearly as out of fashion as Adolf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not too many Adolfs around. Okay, so Stephen, do I detect in your response just now that perhaps you could be on my side of the argument and let Paul and Micky live in their little idealistic bubble, whereas both you and I see the Rodgers PR machine in full effect?
I think I was being more cynical than Stephen.
Oh.
I think he's been quite genuine, to be honest. That's just who he is. I think Brendan, he's a people person. He's he likes to get to know the players. He likes to manage them. He likes to get to know the player and who they are. I remember watching a video of him when his first spell at the club, when he spoke about how he's the first one there in the morning at 7 o'clock, and his coaching team are all there with him, and they talk about individual training plans for each individual player and what they need and what they should be doing that day. So by the time the players bowl in, I don't know, about 10 o'clock or something, then they're all set to go, and there's an individual plan for each player. Now, whether that's true or not, who knows, but it shows you that he is very focused on improving players and working with them on a one-to-one basis.
All right. Okay, so we're getting through the positives here quite well. Let me just scroll up. My notes. Okay, Hatate, all the players signing up, Brendan having a word with them. That's another thing. He never misses an opportunity to tell us about his conversations with players, before they sign contracts and all, but I think I've made my point. He's given Liam Scales self-belief. I can't get over the Liam Scales transformation. It's extraordinary.
I think it'll be hard to get him out of the team whenever everybody's fit. Him and CCV could be the partnership.
They will be until post Champions League, and then Nawrocki's got time to build himself back in. I think, don't get me wrong, it's a pretty drastic transformation, but I'm not quite in this camp that says Scales is the new Messiah at centre back. He's still got weaknesses.
I think going forward.
Well, I think he's most susceptible to the ball over the top,
good.
Right? His passing's pretty good. His positional, he takes up really decent positions both defensively and as he steps forward. He reads a tackle pretty well. He doesn't often sell himself in the tackle, but if that ball's put over the top, he is all over the place. And all the trouble that's come in his area is when the ball gets popped over his head. So when we're sitting quite deep, which we sometimes are in Europe, we haven't really seen that cause too many problems. I'm not sure how quick he is either, but that's a separate story. But if when in Scottish football where we're high up the park, a well-placed ball over the top, he's in a fair amount of trouble. But I'm not trying to sort of slate him. I just don't think he's quite as far along as some fans seem to have jumped to. Like, fans love to be polarized. We talked about this off air. You've got to be one camp or the other. There's no nuance. Everybody said he was out the door. He was off to Aberdeen, and most people expected that. And then when he gets some games, he's like, he's not good enough, etc. He puts a few run of games together. Now suddenly he's, it's his jersey to lose, which it kind of is. But I don't imagine that it's going to be a pretty strong fight between him and Nawrocki when he gets back to full fitness. But he'll see. Nawrocki's not in the Champions League squad, right? So he'll see out till the end of that and up to Christmas and give him time to bed back in. But come January, I think reset's completely there, and it'll be fair game.
All right. Well, Scales' development is possibly another feather that Brendan could put in his cap. I think it's fair to say. So let's talk about what he hasn't done so well. Has anyone got anything to proffer as to things that you think Brendan could have done better to this point of the season domestically?
I think in terms of things he could have done better, it's all about transfers, basically, isn't it? It's all about recruitment, and it's questionable how much control he has over that. I think the sort of issues we can see in the team at the moment are generally down to recruitment. So if he hasn't gone into Mark Law's office on day one and said, I need a new goalkeeper, I need a new left back, and I need a backup striker, then you could pin that on Brendan. But whether he has maybe done that for Mark Law and he just hasn't been delivered the players he's asked for, then that wouldn't be his failing. So I think it's kind of difficult to make that call.
Yeah, that's kind of my first point was the PR error of him coming in and talking up our spending and taking us to the next level and raising expectations. And then it all ended up sounding a bit hollow for whatever reason, whatever happened. If he was armed with all the facts when he said that, I don't know. Did something change? Did we just fail in the transfer market a few times for reasons that were out with, as they say in Scotland, his control? There goes in a Roman
You hear it,
ambulance.
the Roman ambulance. Yeah. I think
You're
Morrison
going to speak
put one of
to
those
Paul.
on one of his albums. He made an album over here and started one of the songs as a Roman ambulance going past.
Who's that?
Morrissey.
Oh,
I
yeah.
can't remember which song it is, but anyway.
Paul.
I was just going to say that the PR was, whether how much control or otherwise, and what influence he had on that, regardless of any of that, the way he delivered that message early on was, in hindsight, pretty poor. Like you feel like there's something definitely going on in the background, because it seems a bit naive to be, and he's long enough in the tooth to not be naive, to go that gung ho and make the statements he made, and then to not really deliver at the level it sort of appeared to indicate. So a lot of people obviously read into that there was something really sinister, that he'd been promised something and then the rug had been ripped out from him. I think it's probably more likely to your point around, we had targets, we couldn't pin them down for whatever reason, and as such, I think he's done okay without being spectacular in that window. I'm not as negative as a lot of people are. Yes, we needed a left back and a goalkeeper, and neither of them got addressed. So far, Joe Hart's done well, better than expected, and Taylor's finally come back onto a game, so it's not showing up too far, especially domestically. Europe's a different story. But January will be very interesting, because a lot of people said he needed time to look at the squad, see who was, up to scratch or otherwise. And he's got that. And he's, to be fair, he secured all the key players we'd all want to be secured. And that shouldn't be sniffed at, right? When those guys, what I'm saying is most of them won't see out their contracts, but when they do go, they'll go for a lot more money than they otherwise would have. So there's clearly a buy-in there. I think January is a big window. We'll see what happens then. It's, some people say it's a difficult window to buy in. There's also opportunities with other seasons in different parts of the world finishing. So it'd be interesting to see how that pans out.
It will be. Let's talk about a key player now. Let's ask Micky. Has Rodgers neutered Kyogo?
I don't think he has. I mean, Kyogo scored quite a few goals. He's playing slightly different sort of position to Underange, but I don't think he's neutered him at all. I think, I don't know. I mean, he's getting on in the positions. He's scoring his goals. He scored a Champions League goal. So I think Kyogo's doing just fine Underange, to be honest with you. I don't know what you guys think about it.
Well, somebody says that Paul is the most negative guy on the panel. I think that'll be news to Paul.
I think so.
I think Kyogo's doing fine. He's got a Champions League goal, as Micky said. He scored. He got his goal at Ibrox, and he's off the mark in a domestic sense. I don't really see this notion that his game is somewhat hampered by the way that Rodgers plays. I don't see that at all. There's more facets to his game than just playing on the shoulder of the last man. He's a very good footballer. He's good at a lot of different things. He's got a good first touch and a great instinctive finish, and that's been evidenced by some of the goals he scored this season. So I think he's doing fine.
Is it not just because we're so used to seeing balls out wide, pinged across the box, and him getting on the end of it? And we have come to expect that in every game. And when it doesn't happen, it's upsetting. Or when we see him playing deep, we think that's not what he's supposed to be. He's supposed to be the tip of the spear. He's not the tip of the spear under Brendan, is he, Paul, particularly?
No, he's going to be asked to do, in Ange's system, he really was just asked to be there to be in the box and finish chances. He's going to be, the touches per game is clearly up. He's clearly asked to do more. His work rate off the ball hasn't changed. It's still tremendous. I think there was a period there at the very beginning with him dropping deep that led to disruption and other teams didn't know how to defend. And then there was a period where quickly everybody expected him to drop deep. So they kind of neutered him for a period. And then I think over coming games, he sort of got back to a good mix of his old game and his new game. And I think naturally he will score probably fewer goals in a Rodgers team because we're not as gung-ho, we're not as aggressive. we don't create as many chances, but we probably are a bit more efficient, is the sort of phrase that likes to go around, is we're probably executing those chances better when the fewer that come along. But that plays into another point that I've got, but we'll get to that in a bit.
We'll come to that in a second. But just before we do, one more point, which I've got under the sort of negatives, is that he seems to be happy to continue with Joe Hart to me, and that makes me a bit anxious. Does it make you anxious, Stephen? Do you think it's true, or is he just making do with what he's got?
No, I don't think he's happy with Joe Hart. I mean, he's not daft. He's been round the block, and you know, we are a Joe Hart injury away from playing Scott Bain on a regular basis, and you know, Scott Bain's a fine, decent backup goalkeeper if that's all he is. But if you were going to go and ask him to play a dozen games in a row, including Champions League games, then I don't think we're in a very good place. And that's if Joe Hart gets injured. You add into the fact that Joe Hart's at the end of his career and seemingly wants to finish his career at Shrewsbury Town, where it all started. So I can't see Joe Hart being at Celtic next season. And if that being the case, then we simply have to sign a goalkeeper. And you don't want to be signing a goalkeeper next summer with a view to throwing him straight into the team. You want to be signing that goalkeeper in January and giving him a few games before the end of the year to get him up to speed, so that if and when Joe Hart moves on, then you've got your first team ready goalkeeper there. So, but I don't think Brendan thinks Joe Hart is all of a sudden going to extend his career by another 4 years. We can all see that he's on the slide now. His form this season so far has been pretty good in the main, apart from a couple of goals where he may have done better than if he reacted a little bit quicker, which has led people to pointing out that he's getting older and slowing down. And I'm sure Brendan Rodgers could see that as much as the rest of us.
A couple of comments here. Big Red says, I think Kyogo will become a better player with Brendan Rodgers. Remember, Larson used to drop deep to lose the defenders and then make the runs. Defenders hate that. So that's one positive. Another comment from Paul's favourite, love it. Agree, Gav, we need a goalkeeper who can come for crosses and be good with the ball at his feet. If you saw a recent episode, you would have heard Paul saying that modern goalkeepers don't come off their line, apparently, which was kind of news to me. Paul.
Look, they don't tend to come for crosses. They come and punch if they absolutely have to, but generally they let the centre backs deal with crosses into the box unless they're right down their throat. So it's rare that you see goalkeepers these days coming as far as the penalty spot to clutch a cross way above the defenders. Okay. I don't know if anyone disagrees with me, but I'm maybe closer to the modern game than you boys in terms of age.
Absolutely, yeah. Your finger is on the pulse in the way us grey and baldies aren't.
Well, I'm still playing a little bit, so I don't know about the rest of you.
All right, you're going to introduce the next point, which is quite a long one, Paul. This comes under the question of what he's done well or not so well, with a little bit of comparison to your favourite manager.
Well, it's not necessarily saying that Ange is better than Rodgers. So having been recently levelled that I'm the most negative on the panel, I'm about to prove that at least two of you are pretty negative on one player that I'm going to use as an example here. But essentially the point I was trying to make in the run-up to coming up with these sort of topics was that because of how Ange played the game, and you can't really compare one without the other in terms of the squad so recent, Ange, as we all know, played gung-ho, flogged the players. A lot of them, were worked hard, and therefore the subs were utilized every game. 5 subs, 3 at 60, another 2 probably at 70, 75. And there's a reason for that, obviously, because the squad needed rotation because of the work rate. But what that did do was it gave the subs confidence that they were going to get minutes. And substitute, the fringes of the squad need minutes to get up to the point where they can potentially really compete, match fit, and potentially take those places. And so rotation's not as big of a shock when you want to rest some players, because you've got Champions League in midweek and you've got a bottom half team at Celtic Park on the Saturday. I just feel like Rodgers hasn't been willing to use the substitutes to that degree. And it's I think partly because we're not as gung-ho, we're not scoring as much goals, and we're not getting games done as early as Ange used to. So there's not the confidence to go, right, the game's won, 30 minutes to go, bring on the cavalry, let them play. And then in turn, that gives those players game time with not too much pressure. And now where we are is he's leaving subs quite late. Like some of our subs are coming on at the 87th, 89th minute. Like, what's the point, right? You're literally, you may be just saving somebody from getting a strain and bringing them off. You're not doing anything for the player coming onto the pitch. They've got no opportunity to get into the game. Do you want me to continue this point, or do you want a little chat and then I'll bring my example into play, or do you want me to go straight into that?
Well, Michael, why don't you respond to that?
I'd like to hear what his example is, or just to finish it off first.
Okay.
What your example of the
Well, the player I was going to use as an example, and I know that there's a bit of negativity from Gav and Stephen on this, so I'll be able to show that I'm not as negative as some might think here. But it's our Korean friend O. So last season he was averaging, didn't play a lot, mostly from the bench, had a few starts. He only arrived in January, young kid. He was averaging 30 minutes per appearance. And his goal to game ratio was basically a goal every 90 minutes of play. Obviously, he wasn't on the pitch for 90 minutes, but that was his ratio. This season, he's averaging less than 12 minutes. And the majority of those are under that. And the games where he's been on longer, we've been down to 10 men or 9 men. Like Feyenoord, he was down to 9 men, he got more minutes. Livingston, he got, I think, half an hour. We're down to 10 men. So his minutes are well down, and people are very quickly, for a kid who's barely 22 and only been with us less than a year, are quickly saying he's not up to scratch, he's no good, he's never going to make it, punt him. And I just think that this is sort of endemic of how we are in terms of the game time and the minutes. How can you put, especially as a striker, right? How can you get, and I played striker, so obviously not quite at O's level. Jurgen Klinsmann never knocked on my door. But there's a point here that goes, well, how are you supposed to get like confidence and goals? He looks like somebody's over eager. He rushes into things, a bit daft. He's young, he's impetuous. He throws himself around a little bit. He just wants to get to do something and be impactful. But he's got so little time to operate that, that over eagerness is showing. And I think that's a good example of players on the fringes needing time. And if we give them time, then you'll be in a better position to judge them.
Okay, to an extent, I'll just say my little bit here in defense of my view on O. It has always been that I never saw enough evidence from him that he was a good player. And when he first came, there was a vocal number of Celtic fans, or a number of vocal Celtic fans saying, "Oh, great, we've got this guy. Oh, GG can get the fuck. This guy's going to be an upgrade." And I was thinking, "What are you talking about?" The ball was pinging off him. It was pinging off him faster than it came to him. He had such a bad touch, and I just thought this guy hasn't shown me any evidence. And my real point was how quickly some fans jump to conclusions like, "Oh, is an upgrade on GG." What's the guy called? Iwata. What a player. Another genius move by Ange, they were saying after he played 2 games and went sideways and backwards a few times. I agree that it's a lack of evidence. I've still yet to see enough evidence that O's a decent player, but that's hampered by the fact that he's not getting the minutes, of course. So, I wouldn't be averse to seeing him get more minutes just so that I can conclusively say he's not good enough.
Yeah, but you just don't want to lose some matches in the meantime, just because he's on the pitch, just to prove your point.
Prove your bias.
That's my point.
You want to prove your bias.
That's my point on O. But on the wider point that you're saying of players not getting enough game time, who wants to talk about that? Michael, do you want to address that?
I just think it's the way that Brendan has just does it all the time. He never brings on extra players when he doesn't need to, or give players extra minutes. And as Paul was saying, it's a different style of play. I mean, Kyogo was always knackered by 60 minutes, but now he's playing way more time, which then gives less time, obviously, because he's not running as much as the under the Ange system. So I think it's just the way Brendan does things. He gives people, like as you said, comes on at 87 minutes, you get 2 minutes, and you don't really get to get into the game at all. You just get dirty and just need to have a shower, basically. There's not really much point, but that's the way he's always done it.
Stephen, is it true to say that Brendan's more likely to start surprising players than Ange was? You know what I mean? Did Ange not always put out kind of the same team and then he would put on some subs at 60 minutes? Whereas Rodgers is a bit more likely to surprise us with his starting lineup and, throw players in then as opposed to as substitutes, give them more game time from the off. Is that fair to say? Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I think Angie's methods were that he played a rigid system and didn't change it. So players always started. Certain players always started, and certain players always came on at a given point in time, and that was just the way he did it. And he just got the players so well schooled at playing that formation that it was almost automatic. But Brendan's a different beast completely. He plays varying different setups, varying different tactical shapes about the team. So every game, you're potentially going to get something different. So, different players will be suited for different games and different roles within what's really a fluid tactical approach to the game. But just getting back to O for a minute, I think it might just be as simple a fact as that O was an Ange signing. So Ange had skin in the game with O and showing that he was a good player. And it could be that Brendan's just come in and thought, nah, I don't see it with you. He watches him in training every day. And he's maybe just said, I don't think you're up to being Celtic's number one striker or even coming on and leading the line for Celtic for a substantial period of time. And the drop-off is massive from what we were getting from Giakoumakis last season to what we're getting from O now, and towards the end of last season also is really going against him. So it might be as simple as that.
Yeah, whenever Kyogo got injured, Giakoumakis came in, he filled the shoes completely, but you couldn't imagine O doing the same thing at all, I don't think.
Different stages of their career, right? Though, O came in at 21-year-old Rocky. They only had a season or two in Korea. Gigi's bounced around leagues and finally sort of started hitting some form at 27. So I don't think it's. I get Gav's point. This is what we're talking about earlier. Social media, you've got to be this or the other. You can't. There's no nuance. There's no subtlety in discussion. And people one's gone, so you've got to talk up the new one. You can't go maybe we've downgraded. But I think it was downgrade. But equally, there's clearly, like I said, sort of jokingly, there's no way that. I think we all think that Jurgen Klinsmann's a decent judge of a player, right? And especially a striker. And he rates him and he picks him and he wants him in his squad. So I think there's a player there. He's a different kind of player completely to Kyogo. And in small snippets, I think I've seen enough that there is talent there. But I think he is one that's been hampered by a lack of game time. And there's such a, like any of us, we're keen to impress when we get a chance, right? If we've had no chances, one of us hasn't been on the show for a few weeks, we think, Joe, we've got to have, we've got to show a good thing. Same with anything, show off to a woman, whatever it is. You want to impress, and I think he's just trying a bit hard because he's got so little game time, and I think it's negatively impacting him. And I'd like to see him get a start and a bottom. I see a game at Celtic Park after the Champions League game against one of the lower half. I'd love to see him get a start.
Okay, so as all of the viewers and listeners try and imagine Paul trying hard to impress a woman, let's move the conversation on, shall we? Only one needs to be impressed. Only one. Okay, so that's domestically. So far in Europe, we've had 2 games, away to Feyenoord, at home to Lazio. We've got 0 points. So I suppose the first question, or the first couple of questions, if we could deal with those relatively quickly, because we're on 50 minutes already. Is it all over? What realistic hopes can we have, Stephen?
Well, I think realistically, it probably is all over. in terms of this season anyway. We've got 2 games to play against the best team in the group. We're pretty long odds of taking anything from those 2. And at the same time, Feyenoord have got to play Lazio twice. So we've got to hope, even if we are going to finish third now, we've got to hope that we have a better record against Lazio than what Feyenoord do, and that we can take this to the last game and hopefully beat Feyenoord at home. But what I saw from Lazio last week, I can't see them beating Feyenoord in Rotterdam. I can see Feyenoord taking points from that. And if that happens, then we really have to go to Rome and get something from there. So, obviously there's 4 games to play and anything can happen. We can have one of those wonderful European nights under the lights at Celtic Park and we beat Atletico Madrid. That could happen. But on the balance of probability, particularly looking at our recent European record, which is nothing short of an embarrassment, really, I think it's probably in the very unlikely basket.
So a lot depends, it's fair to say, on our next game against the Romans. Michael, you have a very particular point of view. You were in Rome the night of the first match. What was the atmosphere like in the pub?
Yeah, the atmosphere with the pub was good. There's plenty of Celtic fans in. And
have you got loads of photographs to share with us or anything?
Oh, loads of them, yeah. I think I sent them all to you this morning.
Yeah, one, and there's no people in it.
It's just some big flag. Yeah, there was a guy from Cork in for the game. He was either getting married or he was on his honeymoon. And as you do, you pack a giant Celtic flag to go on your honeymoon. So he brought it with him. And he stuck it up in the pub. But yeah, the atmosphere was good all up until towards the end. I mean, it was just such a sucker punch at the end. It was awful. I think I was in my bed before the Celtic players had got down the tunnel at the end of that. It's just one of those ones straight out the door.
And what about in the Italian press? How did they respond?
Do you know what? The Italian press they're more worried. The Lazio lot are more worried about their league form. The kind of Champions League is almost taken a second stage for them because their league form is so bad that they've all talking about that. And they were surprised that Lazio got a result. That's for sure. They were surprised. But I just hope that we don't end up like last season, the last game being a dead rubber. That's so disappointing when that happens. You look forward to these 6 Champions League games and then the last one doesn't mean anything like last season. So hopefully we can get some points on the board before that.
Well, there's a fair bit of negativity around, and right on cue, there's Frank. Lazio are already 3 points ahead of us. How anyone can see us finishing third, for goodness sake, after our remaining 4 games. Well,
Lazio are 4 points ahead of us. I thought they drew with Atletico Madrid and beat us.
They're actually 4 points ahead of us.
Yeah,
they are. 4.
It's even worse.
Not to add to Frank's negativity there, but they're 4 points ahead of us.
Yeah.
Well, sticking with the Lazio issue, prior to the Lazio game, I put this out on Twitter. This is one of our very own, Danno, who's the American dude who lives in Korea. He decided to dip his toe into the murky world of Celtic karaoke with incredibly positive results, I have to say. And he tackled the issue of Lazio and a problematic section of their fan base in the style of, what's the guy's name called? Woody Guthrie.
Woody Guthrie, yeah.
So we're going to play that for you now.
Boys, let's show them what a handful of green and white wearing hillbillies can do. Ready to go when you are, Danno. Don't get those dang old fascists, man. A bunch of Mussolini banner carrying, Nazi flag waving sumbits, man. We're gonna tear them up, man. Abbasso il fascismo. Down with fascism. Anyways, let's just go. Can't speak that language anyway.
So, what do you make of that?
Fair play.
Nice.
Good job.
Michael,
Really
a lot of
package
people are very
moves.
impressed with yours. So, I threw the doors open to other people to participate. I didn't realize everyone would be better at it than me. There you go. What can you do? No, I thought that was great from Danno.
That was good.
Tell us, Micky, what's the view from where you are about that element of the Lazio support?
Well, I mean, the Lazio support have got their fascist element, and the Roma support have got their fascist element too. So they're both as bad as each other, to be honest with you. That's just it's more of a football thing here. For every club has their fascist fans, near enough every club over here. Anyway, so.
And I'm sure there are forces within Lazio's fan base working against it.
Yeah, there are. So I mean, I've quite a few. There was a couple of guys in the pub the other night who are friends of mine, and neither of them are fascists, and they're both Lazio fans. So it's just, again, it's just a small group of people that just gives everyone a bad name, you know.
And of course, I should point out before somebody in the comments does that fascism takes many forms, and all modern governments have fascistic elements to them. So you have to watch out for that wherever it rears its ugly head. Okay, so let's see what some people are saying here for Danno. Brilliant tune, the best so far by a considerable distance. Excuse me.
Second best.
Okay, and then we have Love It, very catchy little song. So a lot of people appreciating your work there, Danno. Good stuff. Sorry you can't be with us this evening. All right, gents. Celtic socials. What are we going to talk about here? Well, I'll start with mine because there's a bit of noise here. A couple of weeks ago, or was it last week? I can't remember, but there was a video going around that, broke the internet. That was potentially me celebrating that wonderful weekend of victory combined with Rangers defeat. There's another video going around that people are saying is me trying and failing to show off my football skills in the pub.
Penalty.
That makes me
Penalty
laugh so
Rangers.
The way the guy the carpet catches the sole of his foot, to a surprising extent.
That's a great Twitter feed, that one, Dirty Footballer. Fantastic. Check it out. Some classic good old challenges in that.
Okay. And then there's another one I've got here, which Paul wanted to include because of something that was referenced last week, which was goal celebrations.
Not even last week, Monday, Gav.
Oh, Monday, yeah. And, well, it's this. Just Brian McClare picking up the ball and running back.
I think I'm just a normal person. Just a normal person. Picking on the ball. I like the idea of picking on the ball. I think it's just the way I am. I find it quite comforting. It's just my character, you know. I think you could say that was probably a crucial part of my football career. Yeah. That was in my nature. I always loved scoring goals. That was the second most rewarding part of being involved in professional football. I like picking up the ball. It's quite incredible. Nice. There actually is a party going on in my head at all times. Yeah.
Old Chalky.
I was beginning to wonder how long that was going to go on for there.
Well,
that's
Gav,
from Brian Gunn, who we've mentioned before.
Yeah, Brian's Gunn's great. He does these things in various football cliches, but I honestly thought when you had your rant about the picking up the knee slides on Monday, when I was listening in, I was like, and then you went, I just want to see Brian McClare pick up the ball. What's wrong with that? I was convinced to come to social media and that was going to be your clip, but sadly not. So I had to include it.
He does a great podcast, Brian McClare. I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to it. Life with Brian, it's called. His latest one just out this week. He's got Jonathan Watson on it from Only an Excuse. So yeah, it's worth a listen.
Yeah, I've heard it quite a lot. I've not heard that one, but yeah, his podcast's great, and yeah, like he's the kind of if most people have probably seen what he looks like these days, but if you haven't, you do a double take and you might miss him in the street, to be honest. But what a player he was, and we obviously unfortunately lost him a little bit too soon. But no footage of him picking up the ball out of the net itself. I guess probably Manchester United were probably struggling a bit at that period. They probably needed to get the game going again, whereas that's probably not as likely when he played with us.
God, it's exciting, isn't it?
So, how's the week?
Paul, that was your choice. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, look, it was it's World Mental Health Day, I think on Tuesday, October's World Mental Health month. And yeah, Norwich City, there's lots of clubs done stuff, and Norwich City put that video out. And yeah, I just came across it earlier in the week when it's probably had a fair amount of traction since most people have probably seen it by now, but just thought it was super powerful. And just, we all know it, but I think suicide's the biggest killer in men under 50. So we're all not far off that age, right? And we've been through that. And I thought it was just a really powerful video that was worth sharing. Without being too downbeat, just a little reminder. Not, hopefully people don't need it, but just check in with your mates, check in the guy that sits next to you at the football, and yeah, can make a big difference.
Yeah, I just discovered last week that someone I knew had recently taken their own life. She was a lovely girl, our age, and it was great crack. Our lives didn't overlap for very long, maybe for a year or so. But it's incredibly heartbreaking. So yeah, hope you're all doing well out there and in here. And just on cue, there's another siren going past. just to prove that there is always a sense of humor to be had, regardless of what's going on. Okay, so Stephen, yours.
Yeah, I'm just. Yeah, so I stumbled across this one today, actually. Now, this is former Celtic player Colin Kazim Richards, who played for the team briefly. I think it was 2016 under Ronnie Dyler. And he's telling people in an interview that Ronnie Dyler was the worst coach he's ever had in his whole career. So I think that was a bit harsh on Ronnie, especially when I looked it up and seen the amount of teams that Colin Kazim Richards has played for. He's played for Bury, Brighton, Sheffield United, Fenerbahce, Toulouse, Galatasaray, Olympiacos, Blackburn Rovers, Bursaspor, Feyenoord, Celtic, Cortiba FC, Corinthians, Lubos, BUAP, Tiburones Rojos, Pachuca, Karagamuruk, and then now in Derby County. Right. So out of all those teams, Ronnie Dyler is his worst manager.
Never heard of Tiburones Rojos. I wonder, where do they play? Do you know?
Mexico, maybe? I don't know.
That means red sharks.
He played. He's Turkish. He's Turkish. He was a Turkish striker. He came. He saw. He did very little, and then he left. I think he scored 3 goals in total, and he was absolutely honking. But now he's telling us that Ronnie Dyler was the worst manager in his career. So
I reckon Colin Kazim Richards might have been the worst striker that Ronnie's ever managed.
Right,
there you go.
And he mentions that Ronnie had a meat fixation.
Yeah, that was the story. Actually, it was meat. He got them to eat in a high calorie diet, so he was getting them to eat, things like chips and steaks and things like that. Things that footballers are not meant to be eating. And guys, like I said, in the interview, he said he couldn't believe it what he was asking them to eat before and after training. But I don't know, Ronnie Dyler's going on to have a really half decent managerial career. So yeah, I think Ronnie's had the last laugh there.
It can't be that bad.
Okay, there's one last little video here, which I have lined up, so we'll just play it. It's apropos of nothing, just for fun. That's a tough guy, Soapy Suitor, being brutally assaulted from behind. I'm not sure whether it was a wisp of a shoelace or a gentle stroke of the fingernails on his.
I thought it was Tom Daly. I thought you were going to announce Tom Daly there.
That's a bit embarrassing. It's always worth highlighting that when that happens. Sometimes it's our players.
I think it should be pointed out that both the ref and the linesman awarded a foul for that.
Isn't it unbelievable?
Obviously, of course. The only disappointment, not a penalty. What?
A point made in the comments multiple times.
Penalty to Rangers.
Very good. All right. Well, I think that just about does us for this week. Unless anyone has any last minute things they want to talk about, like Brian does, as I'm about to wrap up the show. No, good. All right. Well, it's always great to see you, boys. Thanks, Micky, for your second appearance. I hope you'll return again.
Thanks for having me on.
We're probably going to time your next appearance with the return leg, I would imagine. Yeah. Oh, when is that?
28th of November, I think it is.
Okay, so it might be then, because we're halfway through October already. All right, that'll be exciting. You're going to the game. You're going to take loads of amazing footage and
exactly,
outside the stadium and what the food's like, and someone stabbing you in the left buttock.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Looking forward to that.
That'll be awesome. And Stephen, thank you very much for filling in.
That's all right, mate. Happy to help.
Always a delight to have you. And Paul, our Thursday night regular, thank you.
Pleasure.
And thanks to everyone in the comments. If you haven't already, please subscribe. We're pushing hard to get to 500, would you believe? Woohoo.
Wow.
So, we have a lot of regular viewers and commenters. And if they were each to just go out, I'm going to channel, what do you call that band? Why Does It Always Rain on Me?
Travis.
Travis. On their live gigs, they say, just if all of you just went out and did one little act of kindness, how much better would the world be? Well, if all of our regular viewers went out and told just one person who they know is interested in Celtic content about this new and exciting A Celtic World, what a difference that would make, and would push us over that 500 mark, which is pretty good considering it's our first season and it's mid-October. To have 500, I think, is something to be proud of. So thank you very much in advance, regular viewers, for going out there and making the world a slightly better place. And with that, we'll bid you adieu and see you on Monday.